So, hello everyone. Today I'm basically going to be going through the latest icebergs that have been put out by Out of Context League Racing, which I'm sure is on screen now and in the description. A lot of the stuff in this list is pretty unknown for a lot of people, I guess, so let's just get straight into it. Starting off right at the top in Tier 1, Ronhaar Abu Dhabi 2025 is just in reference to that crazy title deciding race that happened at the end of 2025 esports. Ronhaar obviously got damaged early on in that race, but he did manage to keep it towards the front of the field for a long time, to be fair to him. But really it boiled down to the incident between himself and direct title rival Jarno Opmeer.
He's got past Thomas Ronhaar. No, Ronhaar! Contact between the two contenders for the title. It all ends in a brawl. Ronhaar into the side of Opmeer, who is lucky not to be sent spinning to the barrier. And here comes Ismail Fahssi, who gets by.
Moving over to the left-hand side, next over we've got Ronhaar Accusations. This is just a reference to all the cheating accusations that Ronhaar got on F1 22.
I'm very close to saying something.
You know, mate, what to do. Just hold it.
Yeah, for how much longer? Can't wait to see another tweet from Den Haag saying everything is fine.
Got it. Just hold it.
Yeah, I've held it in for the past half year. So is the rest of the grid.
Yeah, no, you're preaching to the choir. I'm not sure if you heard that phrase.
Yeah.
But nowadays, Thomas Ronhaar's obviously won races on LAN and been super competitive in esports for such a long time that these are pretty much disproven in my opinion, and most people nowadays also think that he never really cheated. Another pretty simple one up the top here is the Jeddah Esports Crash. This is just the biggest crash that we've ever seen in F1 esports. Happened at Jeddah 2025, wiped out I think 6 drivers from the grid. Huge chaos after Danny Beresnay crashed into Thomas Ronhaar.
He really does. Oh, look at that! He spun out! Danny Beresnay into the wall, out of the race, collecting other cars. Massive accident. One of the biggest crashes we've ever seen in F1 sim racing. Wheel gone there, and out of the race. Josh Edu, Freddie Rasmussen, Danny Beresnay. Donoso, Tormula, Barrett, and earlier retirement of Brendan Lee. An enormous accident.
The most recent entry onto this list is definitely Jarno Opmeer Pitlane, also up the top here. This is Jarno Opmeer's pit lane win at Silverstone in PSGL F1 earlier this week. Jarno used the wet conditions to full effect to be able to cut through the final corner in the pit lane and take the win ahead of Otis Lawrence, but was controversially later awarded a penalty for this by the PSGL stewards.
Now coming close up the end of Stowe. Is he going to try a late move? In comes Opmeer. He's coming in for a late move into the pits. Now what is this going to do? Is this going to offer him a potential race win? Crossing the line? I don't think so. Here comes Otis Lawrence now as they cross the line. Jarno Opmeer has won it from the pit lane. My goodness me! Jarno Opmeer has taken the Tiger line and victory, crossing the start-finish line in the pits.
And then finally in the top tier, we've got Alex Gillon PSGL. This refers to Alex Gillon's statement that he could finish top 10 in a PSGL F2 race, even though he would qualify at the back. But when he was given the opportunity in both Mexico and Abu Dhabi, he obviously did qualify off the back, as he said, in both, but also finished off the back of the field after immediately jump-starting the race and getting a drive-through in Mexico.
Tier 2 from the back of the grid. It's go time, let's do it.
Drive-through penalty, you've got a drive-through
What have I done? How have I done that? I haven't done that in so long. Absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible.
Moving down into Tier 2 now, most of the stuff is still pretty well known if you pay any attention to league racing day to day. Starting off with Otis's esports celebrations. This is just in reference to Otis Lawrence's celebrations after he got pole in F1 esports at COTA. He did get a warning from the stewards for these celebrations and ended up going on to finish 5th in the race.
Making his way to the end, we're looking for his time, but Jarno Opmeer's looking for something as well, and Opmeer gets 6th position. Fahssi comes over the line, and Fahssi finds 5th place. Otis Lawrence is roaring because he's taken pole position and he's absolutely elated with it. By 9 thousandths of a second, he's even louder than we are.
I thought the studio was on fire with how loud he was being right there. Otis is loving life, as you can see. He can't believe it. If you reflect back to Q1, he was right on the brink of going out, needed the lap.
Tragically is also in this section of the list, which is essentially claimed to be an exploit that allowed drivers to get the advantages of the traction of a pad, like a controller, while being on a wheel. This was alleged against a few different esports drivers to my knowledge on F122, but this was especially alleged against Lucas Blakeley. Obviously this is all alleged, and nothing about this was ever proven to my knowledge. Next on the list, the Austria Esports VSC also involves Lucas Blakeley coincidentally. After he lagged out of esports at Austria, despite it being on LAN, a VSC was thrown. This was correct to the rules at the time though, but it is controversial because it did allow some drivers who hadn't made their pit stops yet to get a bit of an advantage, one of these being Alfie Butcher, who would go on to win the race.
Frederick Rasmussen, who's gone for that earlier strategy.
I'm just looking, I think there's a technical glitch, I think, on part of Blakeley. Obviously, he's going to be a little bit perturbed with that, and unfortunately, means he's going to have to come straight back. So he's headed into the pit. His car will rejoin onto the track. VSC has been raised, certainly here in lap 14, as we now watch Thomas Ronhaar make his way around. More pit stops here. This time, Barry Burman opting for the pit. This time, too, Jake Benham follows him in, as does Brendan Lee. Alfie Butcher, Ishmael Fahssi as well, coming into the box as well. Very flamboyant moves from Fahssi, who managed to burst on through.
Yeah, very unfortunate there for Lucas Blakeley. Looks like a game crash, but this virtual safety car is going to help him out. This is brought out because of that incident to make sure the time is reduced for anybody who does have an incident like that. He's back in the session now, but this is really going to benefit those guys who stayed out a little bit extra.
Tycho Hardy career points is up next on the list, which is in reference to Qatar Esports 2025, basically. In this race, Tycho did get a DSQ and a -5 point deduction for the holding up incident that he did for his teammate basically during the race, which was the standard penalty for that at the time. But given that Tycho scored no other points across the rest of the F1 Esports season, his debut season, his career total remains at -5 to this day, lower than anybody in the entire world, including all of you, me, and anybody watching this video. Down in the bottom right corner there of Tier 2 is Lynx, which is in reference to the ill-fated PGR and FRT merged name. I won't go into much detail on the behind the scenes of this because I was obviously very involved, but essentially the merged name and branding of Lynx wasn't well received at all. The merge did still go ahead under the previously agreed terms, just with the name of FRT. Finally, on this right-hand side of the second most well-known tier is Gabor Zorzo Australia. This is a big crash that happened on the final lap of round 1 of WR Tier 2 on this game between Gabor Xontas and Diego Zorzo. A lot of the Spanish and FVR community that Zorzo is a part of was really outraged at the crash, blaming Gabor, but by the end, the stewards of WR disagreed and it was given no further action.
He abandonado. Esto es increíble. ¿Qué coño han hecho, tío?
China 2025 quali is essentially exactly what it says on the tin. Being only the second round on the calendar in 2025, some of the management for this round still wasn't set up great for esports, and ghosting was on in qualifying, which meant slipstream was a huge issue in this round. Everyone basically went straight after each other to try and secure the best time with a huge toe down the long back straight in China, and this was a bit of chaos basically in qualifying. Lilian EOR Bahrain is also over here. This was a bit of a scandal towards the second half of F1 23, where Lilian Derbecourt took pole in EOR Bahrain with a really quick lap and went on to finish the race second behind Nicolas Longuet, who was at Ferrari at the time. He was accused of cheating quite a lot for this at the time, but was cleared by EOR themselves. But as far as I know, I think rumours about this do persist, but I don't really buy into them. Next up is Owen, Epic Val and Nick. These three, especially Epic and Owen, had a bunch of beef over crashes in social races at the start of the game. It started with this clip of Epic Val and Nick at Bahrain.
Oh vabbè, certo.
Non si vede un cazzo.
Sì, Zidane, fra. M'ha ammazzato. Ma questo non è capito. Che fuori pista stai? Oh, sono rimorto, frate, sono rimorto.
Then we had this incident between Owen and Epic Val at Spain, basically just a couple of days later.
Yeah, you can. You'll get fucked up. Fuck off himself.
Okay, the safety.
Epic Vale obviously respond to this with this takeout in the very next social race at Miami.
What the fuck happened?
Finally on tier 2 we've got Wiktor Smit. I guess he's just on here because he's an interesting character, to be honest, really. He owns F1 Esports News 3 and did own the now banned F1 Esports News pages in the past. He's been involved with Hadrick and PR on console recently and had to settle beef with Luke Humphries to get into World in the first place. Other than that, I don't really know why he's on here. I guess sometimes he can be a bit toxic, but other than that, just basically a bit of a controversial character, I guess. Now then, moving down into tier 3, we're getting into territory where not all of these are super well known, and I did have to do some research on a couple of these to work out what they were. But starting at the top of the tier, we've got CPI Homophobia. This is how CPI were removed from CSS console after some questionable comments towards the owner of the tournament, Harvey Ace. These were basically homophobic death threats, some of which are on screen now, but I couldn't find a lot of them anymore. They've all been deleted, you know, fair enough. But that is basically what this part of the iceberg refers to. Moving across the top of this tier, we get to CarsonF1. This is a weird one on here, as Carson is still quite active to this day in the community. He's an FVR engineer and he's on YouTube. But this essentially refers to the paedophilia accusations that were thrown against him in 2024 with Defy and Jake Smith, who were both 14, I believe, while Carson was 25. There were definitely some really weird messages involved with this whole scandal, but Jake Smith later did say that he didn't really believe in the accusations, so it's hard to know what to believe in this case without actually knowing what was going on. And I definitely don't want to accuse anybody without knowing the full situation, but I will leave links to both the accusatory and defensive Google Docs in the description for you to make your minds up, and there's loads of evidence in there for both perspective if you want to investigate this situation more. Also up the top here we've got DvR and Erpec in reference to Danny Van Ruyten racing on Erpec's account for CPI at Zandvoort. This account swap was discovered after Danny Van Ruyten changed the language on Erpec's account to English from Italian, despite Erpec speaking very little English for the race, and was discovered through an incident report, I assume. Both drivers were banned for the next season of World, which is coming up now, disqualified from the event, and CPI also received some other punishments. Next up in this third tier, we move on to Manuel Biancolilla. Once an esports driver, Biancolilla was placed in F7 for F1 25. I assume this entry is just referring to that ridiculous fall-off that he's seen in the last few years. Moving a little further down into this tier, we'll move on to Mexico Esports 2025, which is a reference to VCarb's penalty for a hold-up by Ulas Azildrim during that race. As far as I can tell, this was for a hold-up of only a couple seconds on lap 16, so it does seem like a bit of an extreme punishment, but this one's pretty unknown because the steward's report for this race was never made publicly available. So the only public information that I could find about it was a couple of tweets that I found, and it's also actually on the official Wikipedia for the season. Getting to about halfway through the iceberg now, and we get to Nathan Richards' job application. Nathan Richards is also a commentator for WR and PSGL and probably some other leagues as well, but tweeted multiple times about he was struggling to get a job like outside of league racing. It does seem recently that he did find something to do, an apprenticeship I think, but I also heard from some sources that he's no longer in that role. That's all obviously private to him though, but I think this makes the iceberg just for the tweets that he made about the situation, because he was pretty public with his struggling with the applications and interviews. On to Aaron Ramirez now. He makes the iceberg for leaked racist Discord screenshots that recently surfaced. Despite these, he's remained in FVR and there's been no statement about these messages from team nor driver. Continuing down, we're going to move on to VNT and R8G Teaming, which mostly came out after E-Series Brazil, where there were a couple points during the race where VNT drivers let R8G drivers through without much of a fight.
So they both started on the hards, but Race has gone on to new hards, and Alexander has gone for new medium. So I think he might be going for hard, medium, medium here in this one. I don't think he'd go back to hards to the end, but of course Race will have to go to mediums here.
On top of these, VNT has many R8G staff and engineers advising the team, partly because of the historical links between R8G and NLR. But this does count as a bit of collusion, as VNT really do play on this link to attract drivers to the team. Next, James Head was a commentator who worked on a number of high-level console events across F1 23 and 24. Towards the end of F1 24, he suddenly withdrew from all of his commentary duties, and this was actually over rumours of paedophilia. However, as far as I know, no evidence of this is public, or at least available to me. Esports LAN PCs refers to how the PCs used by F1 Esports on F1 23 and potentially also 24 were ridiculously overspec'd, so they could do far more than they were required to. But they were set up so poorly that there were still loads of issues with the PCs across the events. Famously, this happened with Jarno Opmeer, who had lots of screen freezes at Qatar, and presumably this happened to other drivers as well at other events. Jamie Mel's cheats was a classic cheating scandal on F1 23. After taking pole in a Creator Series race, Jamie Mel's was looked into for basically having extra grip, which ended up being pretty obvious, as he barely hit an apex in this entire pole lap, which you can take a look at now.
If you're going to push a piece of machinery to the limit and expect it to hold together, you have to have some sense of where that limit is. Look out there. Out there is the perfect lap. No mistakes. Every gear change, every corner. Perfect. You see it?
I think so.
Most people can't. Most people don't even know it's out there, but it is. It's the perfect lap. Perfect.
Alpine edited footage is another that came out as a result of E-Series this year, after a collision between Taisho Hardy and Otis on the final lap of the Mexico Grand Prix.
Absolutely, we're on board with Leo Lund. He's trying to gain all the time he can to the back of Caraton. Caraton dumping the battery, and rightly so. Leo Lund weaving also to try and defend against Otis Lawrence as he dives to turn one. The Alpine's going to send it now, forced to the outside, which will benefit to the inside of turn number 3, trying to show Leo Lund the hard shoulder and force him wide, but he manages to keep that position. And through we go. Leo Lund managing. Oh, there's huge contact with Otis Lawrence. Sends Joris Kroos around as Joris came in and nowhere. Through goes Klaffenbach to take the podium away from Otis Lawrence. As we see Joris Kroos are now coming side by side with Otis once again as he's trying to rejoin the track and keep his position.
In their defense of the incident, Alpine's POV did look like it was edited, probably because of issues with recording through Discord screen share. But this ended up being a huge scandal because it actually coincidentally cut out exactly the point of the clip where the contact between the drivers was. So Alpine initially received a double DSQ and a suspended removal from the series because with some flaws with how they explained it, but these were eventually rescinded after a couple of days after Alpine provided some new evidence to PSGL. The R8G contract in question for the Iceberg was one that was given to Cameron Dowds and then was leaked. I think the key thing about this contract for it to be on the Iceberg was that it was 4 years long, and rumours are that this is why it was leaked, as Cameron was basically looking for a way to get out of it and sent it around to a few people to try and find a loophole in the contract. The final thing then in this third tier is the F7 and Shazoo World entry. This basically alleges collusion between F7R and Shazoo in World on F123, basically to stop NVR from winning. The best evidence I could find of this is this clip of F7R straight lining an NVR driver at Vegas. To make matters pretty clear on this as well, after F7R closed at the end of the game, the majority of their drivers would all go on to join Shazoo. We're moving down into the fourth tier now, which is getting into territory where very few people know what's on this list. So, at the top of it is John Evans' F123 pace, which was supposedly absolutely ridiculous, and reports that I've heard suggest that he was just as fast as Nicholas and Barry in practice, but he can never put it together for Aston in the races. Also high up in this tier is the F124 R8G Mexico Setup. I think this just suggests that this setup was really good. R8G 1-2'd in E-Series at Mexico, won consecutive PSGL F1 races on the track, and had other drivers towards the front in both, so it's basically just a really good setup. The Esports Weather entry alleges that weather in esports has been rigged in some cases. Esports weather has been absolutely mental in some cases, such as that rain-affected race in China that Jarno Opmeer started on intermediates on famously, and essentially this is just a claim that the weather in esports is rigged to create a bit more excitement for the series. The Silent Nika was a news account that was prevalent in June of this year. The rumour that gets this onto the Iceberg though is that this account was ran by a member of VA's management, although this is obviously unconfirmed. Nate's disappearance is a weird one on here, as there's virtually nothing known about it by basically anybody. Nate, who was obviously the NVR owner and was at the time part of FRT's management, simply blanked out his Discord, privated his Twitter, and left all the Discord servers in the middle of the night, and any subsequent attempts to get him to return to the Formula 1 league racing community have been immediately refused by Nath. Moving on to the next entry about EOR owner and SCI manager Mitwi. Mitwi is referred to by many as the richest guy in the league racing community, and it is said by many in a probably exaggerated rumour that he actually owns part of the Jeddah Corniche circuit, and that this is how he's funding his new tournament Race Tech, which obviously has a crazy reward for its drivers champion, which funds them going to the Saudi Arabia Grand Prix. Now on to rumours about Tony Hietala Age. The Finnish Veloce Academy driver claims to be 14 on his socials. Some have speculated he's older than this and is lying about his real age in order to prove his chance at esports, largely based on his voice sounding quite old, I believe. Although his face reveal for EXA disproves this to me, he doesn't really look that old in that picture. The next entry refers to this tweet by Daniel2206B, where he somehow managed to get himself into the game nearly a week before it officially launched, with the release day being the 28th of the month when he also posted this tweet on the 22nd. Now, right at the bottom of Tier 4 is Fahssi's Event 1s. This is just a bit of a conspiracy about how Fahssi has done really well at the start of seasons in his 2 seasons in esports, picking up 2 podiums in rounds 2 and 3 in 23-24, and of course leading the championship after the first event last year, never finishing outside the top 5 at that first event. There was a rumour that he was reported for using 60 FPS in Event 1, which was obviously faster on last year's game, but this was disproven by event officials who went and checked all the PCs. Just 2 left now, finishing off this 4th tier, and we move on to the Spain Esports Qualifier exploit. This takes us back to when there were in-game events to qualify for challenges essentially, but there was a huge exploit with it at Spain on F1 2017. If you lost a car through the final sector intentionally, but held the slide through what is now the normal layout at the time, the motorbike layout, you could cut the chicane section, which would gain you more than 5 seconds and you wouldn't get a warning, which would affect your score. Finally in this tier, we've got MrDaleJE Jumped. I'm not 100% sure on this one myself, but I believe it's in reference to a couple of tweets where Del said and showed that he got jumped. These are now deleted though, so my info on this is just word of mouth really. And now on to the final tier, and we're starting to get into some things that nobody at all really knows. Starting off with the collusion between Aston and Ferrari. Supposedly during the 23-24 season, they would share practice sessions, setups, and some other stuff during the season, which is why I said that John Evans was matching Barry and Nicholas's pace during 23-24, even though he was an Aston Martin driver. They did even clearly help each other in the race at Qatar that season, with Donoso letting the Ferraris and teammate Weigang through while holding up others behind them.
It was all because Fabrizio Donoso is going so slowly, holding these guys up to try and help out his teammate. He's gone deep there and he's still ahead of Josh Ito. He's got a 3-second time penalty for multiple warnings, but he won't care. It's the Kevin Magnussen strategy. Take a load of penalties, hold everybody up, help out your teammate, and score some really decent points for the team. Here comes Jarno Opmeer though. He needs to get past Fabrizio Donoso into that first corner. Jake Benham now, 3-second time penalty.
Yeah, incredible speed. They're going to go 3 wide through turn 1, and Ito very nearly round as well. As they make contact, we've got a series of cars. Donoso with a penalty. Rasmussen moves up to 8th. Fassi's lost 2 places. The Red Bulls bound together, 8th and 9th, and now looking to try and move their way through this order, but it's going to be so tough. Ito trying to rise, a rampage here from the Ronda, from Josh Ito, the Welshman again, foregoing to Ismail Fahssi, and Rasmussen very nearly round himself.
Yeah, now Ito's trying to play that teammate game for Frederick Rasmussen. Of course, there's a championship on the line here. Fabrizio Donoso still will to will with Frederick Rasmussen. I don't think he's going to be able to hold on to that position.
Matt 212's incident with Longe happened during the F1 22 esports season, when Matt 212 was Alfa Romeo's official content creator. Supposedly, whilst Longe was on for a pole lap in Q3 at Mexico, Matt, who was in the game room at the time, took a picture with flash on. This obviously flashbanged the dark room and massively distracted Longe, who would go on to invalidate his lap and start 10th in that race. Moving down again, we get to this entry about Theon McKee, the XVA, TES and current TF10 driver. The rumour essentially goes that he got head from a 13-year-old. Not much more needs to be said on that one really. So moving swiftly on, let's talk about this incident involving the Haas team bus, where allegedly during the event 1 of the 2025 esports series, so just last year, the Haas team bus suffered a major collision on its way to the arena. I guess nobody outside of esports really knows about this one, and I obviously couldn't find any evidence of this, but this is what I have heard. Next across, we've got Liam Bowman's RT button, which is the right trigger on an Xbox game controller. On F1 23, when Liam was basically the best driver on console and definitely the best on pad, his right trigger was actually broken in such a way that was advantageous under traction. I did ask him about it and he couldn't really explain why this was the case, but he had massive grip under traction with this broken controller. Obviously this wasn't intentionally broken by Bowman, just a bit of luck that fell his way. F1 Esports Betting is certainly another underground one, where when F1 Esports used to be hosted on certain gambling sites and was pre-recorded, an individual who knew the results and may not be named for legal reasons took advantage of knowing these results in advance to rake in some cash from the bookies. Finally now, onto the podium of the most unknown things on this league racing iceberg, and we'll kick it off with Nico Benz. Now he's a VA driver, but back in F1 22, Nick Chris as he was known, at age 12 was tearing things up on console. Nowadays he claims to be 14, so clearly for anybody with skill in maths, there's a year missing here. Essentially the rumour goes that Nick claimed to be a year older than he was when he was competing on console, probably just to get a bit of extra respect, as he would have been treated a bit younger than he would have wanted for his pace. Right at the bottom of the iceberg is the Blakeley PC Swap. The story here goes that Blakeley swapped the McLaren PC with his home PC during the McLaren Christmas party for the 22-23 season, which he obviously would go on to win. But the evidence for this one is somewhat baseless as far as I can see, but that is what the rumour goes. And then finally, the most underground thing on this iceberg is stretch res grip. Using stretch res has been popular in loads of games across the years, but it was especially used on F1 on F1 22. The conspiracy behind this one goes that stretch res increased the contact patch of the tyre with the road, which would give you a bit of extra grip on the game, but this is unlikely to be true, and those that did use stretch res probably just did so for personal preference. So, there we have it. That's everything on the F1 League Racing Iceberg explained. Once again, credits go to League Racing OOC, and if you guys did like this video a lot, do let me know, and maybe I'll go back and cover some of the previous icebergs that they've done. I believe this is the 6th one, so there should be some content there if you guys are interested. Once again, thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see you all again very soon. Cheers.